Mama's been hurting, 'cause Daddy's been down. Ain't nobody been working since the mill left town. They got 2 youngins not 10 years old, with $200 left in his billfold. And a week's worth of groceries is the price of gold when your whole damn country's been bought and sold. Never there's been hard times, it's always made hard folks who could get her to the other side and not let it be all she wrote. I'd love to live to be an old man, but God, you can take me a young one. Just don't let the land I love die so young. Of thee I sing, I've been flying low in my troubled mind. Get to digging me a hole my soul can't climb. So it's the end of the world, but nobody knows, as they all just stare at the trash on their phones in a land that's littered with many men's bones who died fighting for somewhere they could call home. Whenever there's been hard times, it's always made hard folks who could get her to the other side and not let it be all she wrote. I'd love to live to be an old man, but God, you can take me a young one. Just don't let the land I love die so young. Of thee I sing,
flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, yeah.
What is going on, Hive? Happy Sunday. Today is June 29th, 2025. Sorry, I think what I used to check my audio is a little delayed if you hear the echo. But we got it. We got it all dialed in. You know, last night I popped into the Discord and I was chatting with about 7 or 8 folks from the Hive, and I just had this moment of like gratitude where it's like, this is so cool that go to a stream and then we can go to Discord and we can just talk, you know, the 6 or 7 of us for about 30, 45 minutes. And so that, if you have not joined the Discord, I would highly encourage it. It was a great conversation. A lot of good, you know, back and forth, just hearing everybody else's perspectives. And one of the things that I took away is that we all followed this case very closely. And as soon as you make up your mind as to what you believe is happening, and if you lock into this is the only thing that is happening, somebody will make a comment and it's like, well, that's such a good point. Because then if that's true, well, then what I was just saying can't be true. And they both make sense. So I think that that's important. And I think that that's one of the strengths of this stream and this Hive is that nobody here is claiming to have the right theory. None of us are, you know, putting our foot down and drawing a line in the sand that can't be moved. And I think that that's a strength. A lot of times people will dig their heels in. We're kind of seeing it on the prosecution side. Actually, not even kind of. We're 100% seeing it on the prosecution side. And look at how vulnerable that makes you for people to speculate on, well, why aren't you looking into other reasons? What is your motivation or your intention? Is it really just that strong of a belief that you're right? Because anything that you've told me or showed me doesn't prove it. And I feel like with an open mind, when you see something that's completely undeniably true, any theories are kind of irrelevant at that point. So let me get these comments up on the screen. My bad. Anyways, that is kind of how I just wanted to give a little bit of a plug for the Discord. If you haven't downloaded it, it's completely free. Great conversations going on there. Dawn was in there last night, who's the founder of the Discord. So that was really cool to get to chat with her. And I want to see who else is all in the Hive. We got Batshit Crazy and Meg P and D Smalls and Lenny and 1111. I just actually was working on your Hive Mind find. Luna's in here. Chantelly Lace with the resting biatch face. What's Gucci, my Louie? Let's see. We got Schwart. We got Jason. Regina. Christina. Christine. Haley. Donna. Bagar. Ange. Good to see you all on this Sunday morning. Good morning, Carrie. Fox Rooter, what's up? Guest mom is tuning in from Massachusetts. Emily's in Pennsylvania. What's going on, Teresa? Hi, Donna. Nice to see you in here. I appreciate you tuning in. The link, as Karen just said, is in my YouTube bio. You just got to click more and you'll see join the Hive's headquarters. Joe's tuning in from Cleveland, Massachusetts, dirty New Jersey, D Smalls, Pittsburgh, Tennessee for one more day. Hopefully that means that you're moving and nothing bad. I don't claim that for you. Sheffield, England, Southeast Wisconsin, my fellow cheesehead. Well, thank you all for tuning in on this Sunday morning. And I don't know if you guys can see, I got the tinfoil hat here. Oh, we got to move the other way. We got the tinfoil hat in the background, which again, these are available on birdiebombshell.com if you want one. The reason why I have that is, well, I believe that what we just watched the defense do, the more and more that I think about these rulings and the more that I read through the documents, which that's something that back in the TikTok days, it was, well, Birdie doesn't read the court documents. No, I do. I've just said that I think that the court documents, while they are important for the case, they don't tell the whole story of how the case even became a case. If you don't know what happened prior to words on paper in a legal document, how do you have any context as to what these words are trying to explain in the case? So while I do, thank you so much, Jill. I appreciate that. The hive mind is the best. And while I do read the court documents, I have said it before, sometimes it takes me a little bit to understand how it is that they're applicable from a legal language standpoint. So I spent some time this morning doing some reading, and I really was trying to find in the court documents what I've been trying to say on stream as far as, was this a trap? Was this a chess move? Does it end up helping the defense? I said that a couple streams ago. So hence the theme for today's stream is to trap the narrative, expose the investigation, and then free the man. It's the art of war. You look weak when you're really strong, and you're never going to interrupt your enemy while they're in the process of destroying themselves. If you guys have not read this book, I would highly recommend it. It's phenomenal. And as Lenny just said, I do believe that Anne is playing chess. So to sum it up, I think that Anne did trap the prosecution. I think that she set grounds and built a foundation if there is an appeal. And I think that she's kind of, I'm going to say the word psyop, not in the term of what we talk about as far as the whole case being one, but I think she's kind of starting like to do a psyop on the juror's mind prior to any of the jury members being selected for this, because she's going to create a reasonable doubt right off the jump. And I have the court documents and I will explain that. But first, I want to go into a hive mind find. I'll give a preface. I got this hive mind find a handful of days ago from 11/11, and it blew my mind. However, it's not safe for work. So I was kind of playing around with it, trying to figure out how could I put this on stream. So I had to crop a bunch of pictures. There's stuff blurred out, but I thought it was super interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, let me get this a little bit bigger. You guys remember this photo here. 11/11 was saying that they were trying to explain in the chat because someone was asking about it, and then we were talking about it in the video clip. We were saying that some girls in a jail cell, they said not even close. This is a cropped and mirrored photo of what looks to be a woman with similar hair to Kaylee G, but in fact, it is not. It's actually Jordan Jones, who's an influencer and content creator for OnlyFans, yada, yada, yada. Here they are, though. The first photo you were asking about, and the others are the entire photo. If you zoom in, you can see they cropped out the image in the mirror that could be seen between them. Now, I started looking into this, and they flipped this picture, right? So you guys have seen me do that on Canva. I mirrored this picture, which would put this over there. And there's a second photo. Shoot, I forgot to put that on there. Give me 1 second. I just have to screenshot this. Give me 1 second. Now there's a second photo that's a different angle that you can see here, which is this. So it's a towel hanging rack. And when it's mirrored, it's a towel hanging rack. And you look at the shininess and the silver on the door. Shininess, silver on the door. You look at the mirror and you look here. This is all blurred out. Again, this is flipped. So what I believe this person did, whoever released this photo, they mirrored and flipped this picture, cropped out this lady here, and put her head on this side of it. Now, why somebody would take the time to do that, I don't know. I actually was able to recreate it almost to the identical point. Now, the reason why I can't do that is because these chicks are in lingerie, and I don't want to get any community guideline strikes. You guys can probably go find and Criminal Minds said he covered this a long time ago. I don't doubt that. This is, if you did, this was my first time it was brought to my attention. So Criminal Minds, you got a video explaining that? Because if so, I'll just send people to your page to look at it. But I wanted to bring that up because this had come up in a stream again where they're like, it looks like a jail cell, but it is in fact not. So I thought it was interesting. And again, it's hard because this photo is cropped halfway. It's not safe for work. I don't know if there's a way that I could share the photos on Discord if it's not. But then again, it's like I also don't want to be posting nudes in the Discord here. It's just interesting. It like part of me thinks, is this some sort of like sick OnlyFans promotion where people are going to eventually figure it out and then they're gonna be like, oh wow, who are those girls? And they're gonna go look it up. Like, did some promoter do this? If you've ever been on X, you know there's just absolutely insane promotions for those types of links. Now, some people are saying they haven't heard this. Some people are. That's as much wiggle room as I probably have on YouTube and like the normal platforms here. So Pat Ward said, yeah. So people are saying this came out a while ago. Okay. I'm not trying to say that it hasn't come out a while. Maybe I could make a not safe for work one. That just feels a little bit weird. I'm sure Mrs. Birdie would absolutely love that. Hey, babe, trust me. I'm investigating. That's what this is. The people need to know the truth. Is it two OnlyFans creators in lingerie that people are just messing with and we have to expose it? Maybe she'll see this and that'll like ease into that conversation, but I don't like my chances. But yeah, it was new crops and overlays. All right. So I've been trying to figure out a way how to do that one, but that's kind of the only way I could think of doing it. So there's that. Now, this is what I wanted to get into. And I believe that Ann Taylor was saying, let them deny it. That's the trap. As far as the alternate perpetrators, and I have it on the next slide, is some screenshots from the court documents, actually from the motion a while ago. It is just remarkable to see how blatantly the state is saying in these documents. Okay, these are facts. This is from the motion in Lemony 5. So not super long ago, but a little bit ago. But I'll read this because we're going to break this down. Item 13.1 is a swab of left fingernail clippings from Maddie Mogan, Jade Miller, and an analyst with the Idaho State Police Lab analyzed the DNA profile obtained from item 13.1. She found the DNA profile indicates a mixture of DNA with a major profile, which is consistent with having come from Maddie Mogan. For her analysis, Miss Miller assumed 3-person mixture and compared the DNA profile to the DNA of several other individuals related to this case. Her comparisons provided likelihood ratio results and to show the likelihood that each person compared contributed to the DNA profile. Miss Miller then determined for each likelihood ratio result whether it supported inclusion or exclusion, or whether the likelihood ratio result was inconclusive. Now, keep this in mind. This is an expert that the defense got to get another opinion on the DNA after the state did. So keep this in mind here. Now, Applying those ranges to her likelihood ratio results, Miss Miller concluded that it is inconclusive. The following persons are potential contributors to item 13.1. Jack DeCour, Cole Berenberg, Ethan Chapin, Xander Cornudo, and Bethany Funk. She also determined it is inconclusive whether Bryan Kohberger is a potential contributor to item 13.1. Now I'm gonna get out of this full screen thing here so I can zoom in, because this article, this part right here, so now these LR means likelihood ratio. Okay. Jack DeCour has a likelihood ratio of 0.399. Cole Berenberg has a likelihood ratio of 0.485. Ethan Chapin has a likelihood ratio of 3.33. Xana has the likelihood ratio of 0.201. Bethany is 0.02. Bryan Kohberger is 0.04. So we have Bryan Kohberger, who is less than Cole Berenberg, less than Ethan Chapin, barely higher than Jack DeCour, in the middle of Bethany and Xana. So right there should be like, okay, this is where I believe Anne was laying the groundwork for this alt perp trap that she said. Because right there, now it's not the state's expert, but it is an expert. And if we continue on to the rest of this document, the defense has disclosed Jennifer Bracamontes, a caseworker at Cybergenetics, as an expert witness in this case. See the defendant's supplemental response to request for discovery regarding expert witness. Miss Bracamontes utilized a different program than ISP to analyze the DNA profile obtained from item 13.1. She determined that Bryan Kohberger could be excluded from the DNA profile obtained from 13.1. The defendant's supplemental response to request for discovery regarding expert witnesses. Moreover, so now this is the state's, obviously this is in the state's response. Moreover, the mere fact the defense found an expert with a different opinion than Miss Miller's does not make Miss Miller's opinion excludable. The question under the evidence rule is simply whether the expert's knowledge will assist the trier of fact, not whether the information upon which the expert's opinion is based commonly agreed upon. Miss Miller's opinion is that she is redacted. Miss Bracamonte's differing view that defendant can be excluded as a potential contributor does not make Miss Miller's opinion excludable. For the reasons stated above, this court should deny defendant's motion. Can you imagine seeing that as a prosecutor and having to look yourself in the effing mirror and know, wow, this guy's DNA from a different expert is so different, and puts him right in the middle? She actually says Bryan Kohberger can be excluded. And you're going to say, no, well, that doesn't make our expert wrong. So we're going to push to deny this, because technically the defendant could then just discredit our expert. So they still have a chance. What a joke. What a joke. Because that's what they're making it. And I don't know if it's a legal loophole. I'm not trying to claim that I'm an expert in court docs, court cases, legal hearings, legal jargon. I have no idea. But on its face, how I interpret that, and from the research that I've done, which again, just because I'm not a lawyer doesn't mean that I can't use the internet and learn. And God forbid people continue to learn stuff after they finish schooling. It seems like it's a crime to enjoy learning. And I'm not trying to get fired up, but I look at this, and this, they're arguing that, okay, just because her opinion's different doesn't mean the defendant can't argue that. But we're not going to let this expert, any of their stuff that they found, actually be relevant. You guys could just know that. The jury's not going to see it, but you could just do it in your cross-examination. Exactly, Phoenix. You know, that's what I was talking about with this, is laying the foundation by Anne. It's going to end up getting him free, but it's going to also end up having no one be able to be held accountable for this shit. It's just insane. So here you go, Phoenix. Chat, or the links in the chat. Now, I want to talk about something while we got this up on the screen. Because while the defense, I believe, went in knowing that the court was going to deny it and that was going to be the trap, I don't think it was ever about winning the motion. Because if something like this has already occurred, and if you're going to present the same people, that doesn't make any sense. There's such narrow evidentiary thresholds in this case, but I don't think the goal was to get it admitted. The goal was to force the state to expose its blind spots publicly. I think Ann Taylor is, how can I say this? It's almost like Ann Taylor probably knows there's a lot of people like ourselves who are diving into this case, who have been calling out corruption amongst politicians, amongst giant corporations, amongst court systems, law enforcement. She knows that we're seeing this. She is admitting, she's forcing the state to admit its own laziness. And by denying the previous motion, by denying this motion, the court and the state are now on record saying, we don't believe there's sufficient evidence that anyone else was ever a suspect. But the defendant's DNA from our expert was not even the highest on that list. There's also no DNA on the victims, no blood transfer on clothing, car, or the apartment. Tower pings that prove nothing, a car that looks like a million others, witness statements that break the timeline. So I've been trying to think, now that the Karen Reed case is over, and there's a lot of people that I think the Karen Reed case, similar to the Idaho case, it's doable, but like you kind of had to pick one or the other if you really wanted to like fully submerge yourself in knowing all of the updates. So I've been trying to think like, what is something that we could do or say or make or have a video that's like on its face, it doesn't even tell you it's about the Idaho 4. Like if you were to just say, hey, there was an expert on a secondary opinion that this bombshell DNA that law enforcement's using and used, their smoking gun to arrest this guy, it actually wasn't even the highest of other people that they tested for DNA. There's no blood in his car, on his clothes. There's no other DNA in the house. There's no other DNA on the victims. He drives a very common car. There's no motive. There's no murder weapon. And he's about to be put in front of the firing squad. There is not a logically thinking person in the world that could read these facts on paper and think that justice was being served. But at the second that you put Idaho 4 on that paper, I don't know what happens. People lose their mind. I don't know what it is. And I believe that in a way, this is going to end up being, I think Bryan Kohberger is going to get sympathy from the jury because of this. If the cross-examination is done right, they're going to see, without saying it, that the defense was prevented from naming other suspects. The jury's going to wonder why. Why would the state and the judge not allow the defense to explore other explanations for this crime? Just let that question alone hang in front of the jury. seeded in throughout the cross examinations. You got 12 people that you got to just plant that little seed into their minds. I feel like Anne kind of just gave the bird to the system. We gave you a chance to explore the truth. You denied it. You chose a narrative. Now watch us rip that narrative apart and leave your process in ruins, along with the credibility. I don't think it's just a defense anymore. I think it's a complete rebuke of a system that was willing to trade due process for public pressure. It says we don't need to prove who did it. We only need to prove that you didn't care who did it. And as long as you can convince the media you solved it, that's all you worried about. That's not justice. That is state-sponsored fiction. It's a story. The prosecution thinks that it's genuinely closing in on the defense. All the defense has to say is, if Bryan Kohberger's guilty, why did you never look into anyone else? And you got to say, well, a jury would think, well, how do they know Bryan Kohberger was guilty or the only person who committed this crime? And they never looked at anybody else. They actually spent months denying that. They struck down alternate perpetrators. That's doubt. That could win the case. Sorry for that rant, Phoenix. I didn't look down until I got done.
You're all good. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Wow.
I mean, so I don't know if you were in here when I was kind of talking about all of this stuff here, but I want to know how many people that are, as our friend Will would say, guilters, understand that Bryan Kohberger's likelihood ratio from, while not the state's expert, which, come on, let's all be honest with ourselves. I think most corruption in court cases that you could prove and you could look back at with track records comes from the state side.
Yeah. Well, remember, Bertie, they're in a forensic war right now, right?
Yep.
And what we are seeing, most people are paying attention to this case because of this atrocity. But now people are realizing what our court system does. They're all on the same side. They know that he did not do this, right? I mean, I think we're all aware of that by now, right?
Yep.
Because of the forensics, because of the blotched investigation, because of the witness statements, because of the affidavits, we are now seeing this played out as how the state and how the defense is going to get him out of this mess with avoiding a huge potential lawsuit.
Do you think, like, to that point of why it's getting people's attention, right? It's a huge tragedy. And then this, when you hear, if you haven't been following it, and the only reason you know about the case, Phoenix, is because it's like a huge tragedy. It's been out all on Dateline, Amazon, 2 books, right? And then you hear alt perps were shut down by the court. You're thinking, well, the defense just tried a Hail Mary and it failed. It failed. It fell right on its face. Now it has to be Bryan Kohberger. But I think the hidden play is that Ann Tiller understood the Idaho Rule 404B, which is the court's position that pretty much guaranteed this was going to be denied unless there was overwhelming evidence. Ann knew that it didn't need to be granted. What Ann just did is she locked the state into their story. It's now on paper. The state is locked into this story.
Correct. But not only the state is locked into this story, she knew it would play out this way because they have their own DNA expert, Dr. Ben, who, if anyone's been following the case, all the summary and all the court documents up till now, this was done almost a year and a half ago. And this expert is going to testify everything she just laid out, that it could not be Kohberger. But yet no one is held accountable. Yes. Everyone walks away.
Because the prosecution not only is like the whole story and the narrative locked in, The prosecution now in the trial during cross-examination, unless they want to perjure themselves, is stuck saying, well, we didn't believe it was necessary. And they just assumed Bryan was guilty. They stopped investigating. That's not law enforcement. That's literally a confirmation bias, and it's going to be very obvious in cross-exam.
And this is the argument between the prosecution and defense. Kohberger will never take the stand. However, Hitler, the media is saying, oh, it was rejected. It was rejected. There is a tiny bit of information that everyone has looked over in these documents.
Yes.
And dude, it was plain and simple. Anne can question the X, Y, and Z on the stand about alternative perps.
Yes.
Even though she can't bring in any evidence, that doesn't mean you can still not ask the questions. And I went off on a rant the other day. I did my own YouTube. It was my very first one.
Nice.
And I went over the documents and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Everyone could be asked these questions, and then their expert will come in and say, were there other DNA that were not tested? Yeah, there are 3 unknown identified male DNA that didn't meet the alternative perp theory.
Yes.
But there's 3 other people that Anne needs to go out there and find out and name.
It's a joke. It's a joke. And you want to know, it's kind of what might be the most what's the word I'm looking for? Like when kind of justice is served with like a backhand slap, like maybe like karmic.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
or there's karma, but there's like whatever. I'm trying to say this is going to be, if this case goes how we think it is, which again, we are speculating. We don't know. Maybe Bryan did do it. I don't believe that he did. Obviously, if he did, goes without being said, he's a piece of shit and he should rot in a jail cell if he did this. But
Correct.
If it's not that, you know who's going to end up wearing the giant badge of corruption? It's going to be Judge Hitler.
Well, I mean, within, as you call him, aka King
Hitler. Damn it. I should have said that. King Hitler is going to be the literal symbol of corruption in this, though.
I love the cartoon and the pictures that you put out there. Those were classy.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you think about it, he's the ultimate presiding ruler. And I don't believe, he took this under advisement. I mean, that was a pretty quick order. They did push back the court date, which that is a delay. I don't know why everyone's saying there's no delay. That's 7 more days that Anne has to strategize. That's 7 more days that the defense has to find whatever they need to find before a trial. I've seen some last minute Hail Marys right before trial to where, charges have dismissed, people walk away with plea deals. I don't think we'll see it here only because of the fact that Anne put up a good strategy. She is on the ball.
Well, and what's interesting, Phoenix, is I think that people need to understand, like, Anne's closing argument. I don't think it's going to be that Bryan's innocent. I think it's going to be, if they can do this to Bryan with no DNA, with no blood, no match, no motive, no timeline, they can do that to everyone. And I think there's something about Americans if you're on a jury, I don't know how to explain it, but I do think there is, while it might not be the best showcase of American rights and values, and there's something I think inside of everybody that feels a little bit of patriotism, where it's like, if Anne just asked, are you okay with this? Is this how we now do justice in America? You pick a guy and you ignore everything else and you just pretend it's enough. I think that that's going to be her strategy. Not that Bryan's innocent. I think it's going to be making people question morally, is this the American justice system?
Absolutely. I think there'll be another catch-22 to this too, because if you were looking at the court documents and reading, plain as day that these other alternative perps were not involved, it didn't say that they were, what percentage of testing, right? And I think that was the other evidence that Anne put into the court record that the judge denied. I think Hitler looked at it and said, there's not enough evidence. And remember, there was a situation where Anne questioned specific evidence. They had the third-party evidence investigator come in, And I don't think they got the answer that they wanted to hear on the prosecution side. And that is why he left it plain and simple. Who were these other three DNA? How are they going to find out who these other three DNA? They couldn't just go out and check ancestry DNA because that's what they did to BK.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's almost like Anne saying, you're going to not let any of the alt perps be identified with the exact same methods you identified Bryan Kohberger.
Correct.
And like, I think everybody needs to stop pretending that this is a fair trial. We also need to stop pretending that this the alternate perpetrator motion failed. Because I don't think it's about, I think this is literally just about exposing the institutional corruption, the arrogance, a state machine, if you want to say it that, but the illusion of justice has been a crippling issue in America for decades, Phoenix. Decades.
But here's what they were trying to hide, Bertie. And it's plain as day if you follow the trail. If the frats didn't do this, the roommates didn't do this, Bryan Kohberger didn't do this, we're ruling out people who did not do this. Who did this? It was a hit. It was, in my humble opinion, allegedly, because of the pipeline failing and falling apart, this was a fallout from what you see for the last few years that happened with the midman pipeline, the big guy pipeline, the DOJ, the FBI, all the other agencies, multi-agencies that have been taking down this pipeline that ran right through there and in their own backyard.
Well, so I want to finish this little tidbit, Phoenix, but then I want to tell you about a Discord conversation that we had last night. And but essentially to segue right off of your point, it's, well, we found a car, we found a sheath, we're good. The court's going to deny it. The state celebrates it. Yet they're not realizing that they are admitting under oath this was a single suspect investigation with a working document from day one. Like, that's literally what they just did for a effing Supreme Court firing squad case.
But who did it? Who put this all into play?
Well, that's the $1 million question.
The 3-letter agencies with the I.
I know. And that's
they gave the IGG tip. They narrowed it down to Kohberger. MPD stopped searching any evidence, any investigation. I mean, you see them throw down Maddie's jacket allegedly on video. You see we have only seen what they have want us to see. Yes. But those who are thinking outside of that box, outside of our phones and looking into other things have seen exactly what they were trying to hide from our own national security.
Well, and I just think, like, me personally, I'm sick and tired of the state caring more about a conviction, prosecutors caring more about their careers than they do the truth. I don't know how else to explain it other than just saying it outright, because anytime that a case gets reopened, in addition to, if you watch a documentary on it, for example, Making a Murder is a great example. In addition to looking at who else could have done it by proving the innocence of the person who was wrongfully convicted, do you know who always ends up getting put on blast and just catching strays from everybody? Is the prosecutor. And then you go look into the prosecutor. They are dirty as hell in so many big, high-profile cases.
They chose a prosecutor who was already on the fence of being corrupt.
It's just crazy. It's sickening. It's sad. It's scary. It's a shame. And it's also a shame now that people like ourselves sit here and we can point out X, Y, and Z. We can speculate. We can do whatever. But at the end of the day, you want to know what I think is the most just confusing and surprising thing to me is how we're sitting here with innocent until proven guilty as our, like, golden star that's at the top of our list as to why we do this. And people will drag you through the mud. People will discredit you. And these are our peers. That's crazy to me, that we as civilians have one of our peers who's on trial for a crime, And we are supposed to figure out, did he do this beyond a reasonable doubt? Did he kill these 4 kids? Because if he didn't, guys, that's such a disgrace on
And
all.
again, Bertie, if he did not do this, the jury hopefully will do their job and find him innocent, just like Karen Reed.
Yep. So I wanted, I brought up the Discord conversation. Phoenix, I don't know if you were in here when I was talking about that, but like on the Discord, there's like the voice chat lounge. So there's like 8 people in there, and me and Mrs. Birdie popped in there last night. We were just hanging out and talking to people. We like Will had got brought up again. I don't want to keep bringing up Bryan Kohberger's friend, because again, it's not like Will was putting him at the crime of the scene of the crime. Everybody, Will was just saying that he was an acquaintance from his past who felt like how Bryan's being portrayed in the media is not accurately. Now, you can choose to believe Will, you can choose to not believe Will. I believe Will. Phoenix believes Will. There's a lot of people that do believe Will. Now, what's interesting is that if you go back and you turn on the subtitles and you listen to what Will says, there are aspects of what he says where he goes, well, when I got out of it, people would still show up at my house. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? So to me, that doesn't just scream using, that screams dealing. You could argue that he says when I was dealing, it kind of sounds like doing too when we were.
Yeah. And I sent you a message saying, hey, something's not right here, right? Yeah. Something.
So then when I asked Will, do you think Bryan was a Fed? He goes, no. I go, what about informant? He took a couple, like a 15-20-second pause, couple deep breaths. He goes, I don't know, unless he got caught doing something. And Doms in the Discord had brought up, well, how does somebody move out there? What is he out there? Less than, 2 or 3 months? How does he, with narcotics, you got to earn kind of people's trust if you're going to be really running with that crowd. It's like,
unless you're brought in by someone else that's very trusted.
Exactly, Phoenix. That's the only way.
And that's what I said from the beginning. Yep. Number one, my question was, how could he afford his apartment? Being a TA and set up at the university, you have to pay for that apartment. You have to pay for your lifestyle. And how did he just go from, in college back to college in that position, and then on the rug scene the next day at the pool party?
Or he was dealing to make extra cash and not using. Right. Correct. So the whole thing of, well, Bryan got clean at a younger age. It's highly unlikely. Now, what if, Phoenix, when Bryan was recommended for that internship, let's all be honest. If you're going to do an internship as an ex-addict with the police department, it's going to come up in an interview process.
Correct.
Now let me walk everybody through this back to the beginning. So Bryan's recommended for this. He goes out there, doesn't get it, allegedly, yet the police chief is asked, does Bryan work for you, or has he ever worked for you? Police chief says, I have to talk with my attorney before I answer that. Okay.
Correct.
You say that answer for one reason and one reason only. Okay. Either he did work for you, is working for you, or there was discussions about him potentially working for you. So you're very much so aware of him if you're going to have to talk to an attorney to answer a yes or no question. So
now,
go ahead.
Yeah. Now, last night, I went all through the disturbance calls for the 1122 King Road, and I caught a conversation between 2 officers talking to one of the frat guys that was standing there, asking about how do they get on the police department. And the other policeman says they go to your hometown, wherever you're coming from. They talk to previous employers, friends, families. They do what's called in the military, a top secret background investigation. They go and they talk to as many people as they can about you, about your life, about your friends, what you do in your spare time. They know even when you went to the restroom. Okay. So I'm just saying they do a thorough check. So if he was in any talks with working with any departments, whether it be federal, local, state, they would do this type of investigation in the background.
Correct. Now, my question is, does corruption come into play where Bryan Kohberger is a CI? Or maybe it's not even a CI. It's just he applied for the internship and they're like, this guy's pretty bright. He's got a pass. We have a huge narcotics problem out here. We could utilize him for something way more effective than a damn internship. Right?
Possible.
So, yeah. And then let's say Bryan, wrong place, wrong time, as this CI, is involved in this or is involved with the people who did this. Because don't forget, they, in the beginning, when all the court docs started coming out, it was to protect the person not named in case.
Correct.
We still don't know who that is. That has to be a protected person. And now everything coming out with the DoorDash driver and their associates, and how you hear people on body cam footage saying that's a protected person.
It's just the state. I mean, their case is falling apart. So why not put some stuff out there that's going to help the defense?
Well, exactly. And so I wonder if when Bryan says he knows who's setting him up, is it because he's the new guy on the block? They can maybe try to say, we don't trust him. He could have done it. And it really is him being railroaded by LE. And he's just the sketchy informant that went rogue.
Well, remember, this tip came from the 3-letter agency. It didn't come from MPD. They were looking for other people. They were looking for other leads. They were still stumped in the investigation as to who could have done this. And then obviously in the documents, it says the tip came in and they stopped searching. They focused on one individual based on what this 3-letter agency said.
So,
and I'm sure they're going to be asked that on the stand.
I don't know how they couldn't be, but I just think that that's going to be so. Like, what are we really proving in this case, in this trial right now, Phoenix? It doesn't seem to be about finding who else did this instead of Bryan.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at every level. Is it the DNA background, genetic genealogy, tied into possibly breaking their own federal policy in regards to third-party ancestry, data DNA? Is it the innocent until proven guilty, trial by media? Or is it a frame cover-up job? Or is it possibly this was all related to the activity from a multi-agency takedown from Take Back America and get this dangerous drug off the street?
Right. And then you look at the dude that looks like he's 12, who's on the state's team. You look at his background. He's never investigated a homicide ever. It all has to do with RICO and cartel, gangs, narcotics.
Josh Hurwitz
Yep.
is well known in the state of Idaho to take down the drug running. Idaho was so conservative that other states tried to say, well, we're going to bring in Idaho to be part of our state, right? There was like a big pushback on that a couple of years ago, but Josh Hurwitz took down so many cartel area, especially in Jerome, Idaho. In Canyon County was one of the biggest, largest drug running gangs that you would not. I mean, 27 people went down and most of them were from Canyon County. That is a hot spot. And I'm sure, years ago you heard about everybody moving the weed on the street, right? Through trucks, and the truckers that were stopped and caught and then convicted and released because it was hemp. It wasn't actual weed. So if you go and look at their history and do all those click-throughs, you'll see it all the way to the top. They got Jesse James Bailey that was in the area with the Aryan Brotherhood. They got everyone connected to the Arizona, that when the operation in December of 22 in that area where the college is was moved out of that area. They knew they were onto them. They knew it was over. They moved their whole operation from the backwoods of North Carolina, of Idaho, all the way down to Arizona.
What's so hard, Phoenix, is like, there's been so much speculation on this that sometimes it's hard for even like me and you, I'm sure, to keep this, kind of straight in our heads.
Well, if you take a step back, and that's why I've taken a few days off. If you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, this was for national security. If they had to throw somebody under the bus and, just say, well, we've got to get this off the table. The real perps don't need to know we're on to them. We have to do some covering up. How many other cover ups have there been in the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years?
More than we can even name.
Probably what covered now. It is the art of war.
I mean, you got a federal prosecutor. He's not a homicide guy. You got the marshals on site. This is big, everybody. This is really big. And it's not just, and I don't want to downplay this, because if 4 people lost their lives, that's obviously a big deal. But what I'm trying to say is, think about just the magnitude of the powers that be that are involved here from the jump. That doesn't scream simple homicide. And it doesn't scream, oh, they can't figure it out because there's no DNA. Cases go cold all the time where the marshals and the feds don't get involved in it. Oh, looks like Phoenix dropped out. I'll put it back in the chat. If you guys see Phoenix in the chat, tell her that I put the link back in there. So I go back to like, was the King Roadhouse compromised? Was it under surveillance? Were the murders not a part of this plan? And is that why Hurwitz takes the case, is to keep it controlled? Not because he's necessarily like the best man for the job. He took it almost because he had to. A federal operation's at risk of being exposed. Damage control and a media narrative becomes the priority. You guys watch any CSI or like any like cop show or lawyer show, you guys know that it's like, we can't let the public find out. They say that all the time. That could explain the sealed filings, the redacted warrants, the quiet control of evidence, the strategic use of federal tech and surveillance tools. Oh, what is Dina doing up here? I think I put the link in and somebody clicked it. That's funny. I think that also, if that's what's going on, everybody, that sheath could have been a plant. The DNA on the knife sheath could be a complete plant. Hurwitz could be sent in to bury this thing if this op went bad. And that's honestly how I truly feel. Anyways, with that being said, I want to just really quick recap. And that's down here, the art of war. I believe that Ann Taylor locked the state into their story, into their narrative. They showed that this was a single suspect investigation from day one. You got documents showing likelihood ratio from an expert that the state fought to not have be put in there, where Bryan Kohberger is not even in the top half of the list of other people that were potential contributors to the DNA on item 13.1. I think Ann Taylor knew the alt perp was going to be shut down. However, now she gets to cross-examine. She gets to, not that she wasn't always able to cross-examine, she gets to cross-examine in a way of proving and asking questions that they didn't look at anybody else. She locked the state into their story. And I believe that this is not going to be her plea of Brian's innocent. It's going to be a plea of, is this really what we're going to say now in American courts, in a Supreme Court level for a death penalty case, is, Well, it's good enough. Is that what we want? And I think that that will be a very effective method in creating doubt in the 12 jurors' minds. So, Hive, I appreciate everybody tuning in here on this Sunday. This is a little bit shorter of a stream. I got a wedding to go to. I will be in the Discord lounge later this evening, most likely, assuming that Mrs. Birdie and I don't let loose a little bit on a Sunday here at this wedding, which I don't think we will be, but who knows? Please email me any Hive Mind finds to birdiebombshell00@gmail.com. If you're a graphic designer for merch, you can also send me designs to that. The Discord link is in my bio. I will show you guys real quick where it's at here. Let it just load up. So if you go to my YouTube and you want to join the Discord, you just click this more button here. Scroll down and you just click this link. So that is the off-stream headquarters for the Hive. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Sunday. And with that, I will see you guys tomorrow at 7 p.m. with Devil's Advocates. Cheers, everybody.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.